Here I am on the second tape. I've used a whole tape talking about heating, and you know we haven't even got to the part where we got to talk about how your dad got into it. He's not into the story yet. And I want to tell you another thing. You know, when I get home, I'm not going to call you Richard, so don't you expect me to call you Richard. I'm going to call you Charles III. So here we go. Back to our story. We also had some work with commercial shearing, and working with Carlton Kane, our neighbor and chief engineer at Commercial, we developed an electric oven for quick drying the paint that was used on the steel landing mats. They were used by on the hastily constructed airfields by the United States Air Force fighting planes. Many times, Grandpa would drive the truck to make a trip to Elyria, Medina, Massillon, Zillionopolis, and made many trips over to Camp Reynolds in Greenville. The war ended in 1945, and it took some time to get things back to normal. Automobiles were not made all during the war, and they were in great demand. We had a car we drove all during the war, and over 40,000 miles. And we took a drive to California. You know, we were able to sell this car for more than we originally paid for it. We came home on a Pullman train. Have your dad tell you of his first trip he ever had on a Pullman train. We're sure that he will remember that story. In 1952, my partner Russell Mitchell died. We had been partners since 1928, and in all the years we never had a disagreement at all for 26 years being together. In 1954, our secretary, Margaret Carney, died. Margaret worked longer than any of us in that business. She began working for Fred Knoll at the Mahoning Foundry Company, and then she worked for the Banner Mahoning Furnace Company, and then the Banner Heating Company. Under the circumstances, I found it advisable to discontinue the operation of the Banner Heating Company, as it was not advisable to try to operate a retail and a wholesale business in the same location. Also sold the Banner Burner Company to Lockhart. Lockhart died in the late 1950s, and Clarence Barger took over the operation of the Banner Burner Company, and also went into the automatic furnace control business with his brother. I devoted all my time sharing in the operation of the Banner Supply Company, owned entirely by Abel and myself. We changed the name from Banner Repair Parts Company to Banner Supply Company, as the furnace repairs for coal furnaces were on the way out. Gas and oil were fast becoming the popular fuel used to heat homes. In the 1950s, we purchased the business and the building of the Reed Iron and Steel Company at the corner of Griswold and Page in Warren, Ohio. Mr. Hud Reed had been severely injured in an auto accident and could no longer operate the business. Mr. Ken Stanchel, who worked for the Reed, remained as manager of this branch office. After the end of World War II, and things started to return to normal, plants that for the 4 years were producing arms and war materials now are back again in their old business. Materials in our line of business were soon beginning to get plentiful, and we began to feel the sting of competition. Our reason for purchasing the business in Warren, as Warren had always been a good spot for us, and we supplied many customers in that area. Famous Furnace Company opened a branch there and soon would have all our customers. Robertson Heating Supply opened a branch on East Federal Street in Youngstown and were making a drive for our customers. These firms, along with a firm from Akron, had salesmen on the doorsteps of our customers every week. For years, the needs of the Youngstown area heating contractors were supplied by ourselves the Youngstown Furnace Company, the Tice Steel Company, the J.M. and L.A. Osborne Company out of Cleveland, and later joining the ranks, the Torock Supply Company. Prior to the war, and all during the war, none received or asked for any discount from the manufacturer's sheet price on furnaces. Famous and Robertson started the price war. First it was 5% if the dealer bought 5 furnaces, then 7.5% on 10 furnaces, then 10% for everyone on any quantity, and up to the present price, which cut the profit to the bone. Had we been a bit more alert on our inventory control, our competitors would not have had such a good chance to get such a foothold. Charlie III, I got to start telling you about some of the first money that your dad ever made when he was a little boy. In 1940, we joined the Tippecanoe Country Club. Your dad was only Margaret's age then. Before that, Grandpa used to play golf at Mill Creek Golf Course. When he was about your age, I got a set of a few golf clubs and had them cut down to his size, and he started swinging. And he developed a pretty good swing. Well, when he was a teenager, that was in about 1948 when he was a teenager, he was interested in golf, and oft times he would come out to the Tippecanoe Country Club and he would caddy, and Jack Thompson, the pro out there, used to give group lessons for the children. Back in those days, they didn't have electric golf carts. They weren't on the market at that time. So when a foursome went out to play golf, they had to have somebody carry their bags, and that usually meant for a young fellow that carried a golf bag, he got about $3 for a round of golf. And that's where your dad first started to pick up some of his extra change. In 1951, we left the Tippecanoe Country Club and joined the Youngstown Country Club, and the reason for that was that the Tippy didn't have any activities going out there that was interesting for the young people, and all our neighbors around there liked to, Youngstown Country Club had dances on Friday nights and so on, and Aunt Betty and Aunt Carol and your dad and Mary Ann used to go on Friday nights. They'd go out there, and then, of course, another big advantage was Tippecanoe did not have a swimming pool, and Youngstown did have a swimming pool, and that was quite an attraction. When we moved to Overhill Road, the lawnmowers we used were hand-powered. That is, you push the lawnmower by hand back and forth across the lawn. Then later on, the motor-powered lawnmower was developed, and we bought one. It made grass cutting much easier, and it took less time. Many of our neighbors had terraced gardens and others to cut their grass. Your dad had a boyfriend, and they decided to go into partnership in the lawn cutting business. Dad's partner's name was Jimmy Adderholt. They were in the same class at Boardman School. They made for themselves some business cards announcing that they would do lawn work, and the cards also stated, "We trim."
Next.
Among their customers were the family that lived in the house and now owned by Dr. Brandmiller, and that's Mr. Walter Scott. Mrs. Carl Ullman and Mrs. Ross Packard were on Windsor Road. Mr. Don Wright, that lived directly in back of your house. Mr. Chuck Wilsey on the corner of Oak Knoll and Auburn Drive. Mr. Wilsey paid the highest rate, and one day I said to him, the boys didn't expect to be paid that rate for every time they cut your grass. And he said, he was a little huffed about it, and he told me almost to mind my own business, he said, because your dad and Jimmy Adderholt did a better job than Terrace Gardens. So, of course, I wouldn't argue with him about that. Your dad asked his mom, that's Grandma, to keep his money for him, and she would put it in the bank for him, and when he needed any spending money, she would give it to him. And for every dollar he saved, she would add $1 to his own account. There was an opportunity to buy some stock in a local bank. His mom got the stock for him, and I believe he still has the stock, and it was a good investment. His partner Jimmy had the misfortune to break his arm, and he had to withdraw from the partnership, and Dad carried on the business by himself for a while. When your dad was going to college, he always had a job at Christmas time helping the mailman deliver the Christmas mail. Mr. Roger Ritter, who used to have our route, I know that you have Larry there now, but Roger still works in the area. At least he was up around Chester Drive the last time I saw him. The postmaster at that time was Mr. John Doyle, and sometimes he would give your dad a job throughout the summertime to helping out when some of the mailmen were on vacation. And during his college vacations, he would oftentimes help me at the office of the Banner Supply Company. After he graduated from Notre Dame in 1957 and had a short vacation, he came to study for the Banner Supply Company. He had been with us a short time, and due to a change in the tax laws, it was to our advantage to change from a partnership to a corporation. E.J. Abel became the president, your dad was named vice president, and Grandpa was secretary and treasurer. Your dad became well acquainted in the operation of the heating and sheet metal and roofing supply business, and he was also getting acquainted with all the customers. After your grandpa worked almost 40 years in the same building, he decided it was time to retire. So he sold the stock to Mr. Abel, and he became the sole owner. I still held on to the property for a while. Here again, the buy and sell agreement worked out well, as the value of the stock was determined on the audit of the preceding year. This was in January 1962. Grandma and Grandpa took a trip to Florida, and when we returned in the spring, your dad decided he would like to be in business for himself and be his own boss, so he left the Banner Supply Company. We searched all over the Youngstown area for a suitable location and could come up with nothing that filled our needs. We were considering a place on Wilson Avenue in Camel, Todd Avenue on the west side, Penn Avenue on the east side. It was by a stroke of luck that your dad found that Mr. Carmen Vac of the Mahoning Beverage Company was going to move from the corner of South Avenue and Dorothy Street to a new location at 520 Williamson Avenue. Your dad and I went out to see Mr. Vac on a Sunday morning at his home, and we made arrangements to rent his building. As soon as the Mahoning Beverage moved out, we were getting ready to move in. Dad and I went to the Mahoning County Courthouse, took out an Ohio State vendor's license, and on that same day we drove to Elyria, Ohio to attend a golf outing at the C.A. Olson Manufacturing Company. And we secured the distributorship for a line of furnaces they manufactured called the South Air. We also purchased a line of pipe and fitting for the warm air trade. Most of the office furniture came from the Duquesne Electric Company of Pittsburgh and had been used by your other grandpa that you never had the chance of meeting. Dad bought a stake body truck just like the one he has today. He also had a blue station wagon that he used for delivering, just like the one he has today. General business was slow the time your dad started in business, and there were very many people unemployed during the summers of '62 and '63. I remember that the traffic that year was very heavy at the State Unemployment Center on South Avenue. They had to have a traffic policeman to keep the cars from blocking the streets around the unemployment office. Grandpa would keep the office, answer the phone, and take care of the customers while Dad would make his calls around the territory to drum up some business. We shared this building with two other firms. The Dieter Refrigeration Company occupied part of the first floor, and the Jordan Candy Company occupied the second floor. We found them good neighbors and had no problems with the other tenants. Our first employee was Howard Vail. I think you will remember him, Charlie, as he was with your dad for some time. He also worked for Mr. Dieter. Howard didn't have a car at the time, and Dad used to pick him up on Market Street every morning and take him to work. Your mother used to help Dad in his office too, and she would have Rosemary sleeping in the baby buggy with her at the office. Oftentimes Dad would make deliveries after office hours. Grandpa would always be on duty Saturday morning, so Dad could join the boys at the Youngstown Country Club for his Saturday afternoon golf game. We were always willing to help the customers in every possible way, and when it came, or when they came to us with their problems that they couldn't solve, your dad was always ready to give them the benefit of his experiences and would help to keep them as satisfied customers. We also enjoyed a good relationship with 90% of the other heating supply firms, and when we needed something to help us to fill an order, we could always depend on Mr. Tom McCombs of the famous Furnace Company, Vic Turok of the Turok Supply Company, John Fisher of the Tice Steel Company, Lou Owens of the Youngstown Furnace Company. This worked both ways, as oftentimes they needed material, and we would let them have it from our stock. After being in business for somewhere where after 2 years, things began to pick up. The second year your dad was in business, the total sales for that year would just about equal 1 month's sales at the present time. Soon things began to break to our advantage, and as we needed material, Howard would make many trips to Elyria and Medina to pick up furnaces. The Youngstown Furnace decided to move to Pennsylvania to start a new company manufacturing fittings, and they discontinued the Youngstown operation. The owners of the Tice Steel Company were neglecting that business, and they finally closed. And John Fisher, that worked for the Tice Steel Company, came to work for your dad. John had made many friends after many years that he spent in this business. He and Grandpa had been close friends for 35 years, and in all my life I never knew a man that was better liked in this business. He had a host of friends. The customers that John Fisher brought to the McCrudden Heating Supply was a great help in increasing the sales. In 1968 was the year, that's the year you were born, on June the 3rd, and you of course wouldn't remember this, so I have to tell you this story. Mr. Radarski, I'm sure you remember him because you and I used to stop at his gas station to have our tank filled. Mike Radarski was a close friend of Alina. Her last name I just cannot remember. Anyway, she ran the Yoho and Hooker Lumber Company on 523 Williamson Avenue. At one time, Yoho and Hooker had a thriving lumber business, and they were one of the leading suppliers in the Youngstown, especially on the south side. Mr. Yoho died, and he left this property to Lena. Lena did very little business in the lumber line, but they did make and sell greenhouses. To explain to you what a greenhouse is, although you probably know, I suppose you've been in Berkland's flower shop on Market Street. There you will see where flowers are growing. Greenhouses are made of wood forms and all covered with glass to let in the sunlight. Heated to a constant temperature all during the winter, good garden soil is filled in the benches, the seeds are sown, and with the right care, water and proper temperature and sunlight, the flowers are growing. Lena and I got along very well in our first meeting, as I could talk shop with her. I told her I used to work in a greenhouse, and our conversation was friendly. I remember picking up a couple of trade magazines on her counter, the Florist Exchange and the Florist Review, and I was telling her that I used to subscribe to those publications about 40 years ago. Your dad called on her too, and I think he turned on his charm. Anyway, she decided to sell the property to your dad, and although she had other offers that would have other people also wanted to buy it, she liked your dad, and she decided that he would be the one that she would sell it to. I was sorry we were not at home to help with the moving of the McCrudden Heating Supply Company from South Avenue and Dorothy Street to 523 Williamson Avenue. Dad moved before Christmas of 1968. We were in Florida, but we couldn't wait until the month of May to come home, so we packed up the car and we drove home in the middle of January of 1969. You were 7 months old, and Grandma and Grandpa kept you and Rosemary while your mother and Dad went on a trip to Chicago to attend a convention and to see all the latest developments in the heating trade. When your dad moved to Williamson Avenue, he really had more space in the building than he needed, so he rented the rear part of the warehouse to the Superior Chemical Company. They needed space for storage. There was also a 4-room, 2-story house standing where Dad and his employees parked their car. This house they had torn down and the parking lot paved. Superior Chemical Company moved just at a time when they needed the space to store furnaces. Your dad was able to hire Don Ontko, and Don, he found a man who had years of experience in the business. He was an expert on controls and cooling and air conditioning installations. He had been a great help in helping to conduct this business. Carolyn Arndt, his bookkeeper, joined the firm about the same time, as did Frank Jones, who takes care of the warehouse. I don't think I need to tell you any more, Charles, as it won't be long until you will be spending more time around your dad's office and warehouse. You can observe and learn, and someday in the future you can step in and run this business. You will be dealing in a commodity that will always be in demand,